Get us going. So hi everyone, welcome to call 11 of Village in the City, and we're very excited to welcome Al Mather, who is here to talk about digital inclusion and the power of micro-local. So Al, if you'd like to unmute yourself and say hi, and we can get underway.
Hi, it's really lovely to be with everyone today, and I just wanted to say hi to Laura Wigby, who I know from a long time, who I've just seen has joined the call as well. So just as I start hoping that the technology works and I share my screen, I will start with my slides, if that's okay. Right. Is everybody, as it loads, is everyone able to see that? It's coming through, yeah, great. So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Al Mather, I'm Head of Research at Good Things Foundation, and really interested in that amplification of what communities can do, the decisions they can make and the improvements they can make in people's lives. And digital inclusion is a really good example of having that community and person-centered approach. So Mark invited me to talk today about a bit of background about digital inclusion, the work that Good Things Foundation does, and the power of micro-local and communities. So to give you a bit of background, Good Things Foundation is a digital inclusion charity, and we have a really clear mission where we believe that we should live in a world where everyone benefits from digital, and that's digital to achieve what they want to achieve in life rather than digital as something that you have to do. We've supported over 3.5 million people since 2010 to go on that journey. And really critically, 82% or over of those people who we've supported are socially excluded. We have impact by working with thousands of local community partners, and I'm going to go into a bit more depth about our community network as I go through the slides. What's really critical to us is that we think global, we think local. So we work across the UK with a network of over 4,000 partners, but we also have a sister charity in Australia, Good Things Foundation Australia, where there's a network of over 2,500 community partners. And we also work in Kenya with the library network there. So what is digital inclusion? I think it's gone on the radar a lot more during the pandemic, but it really boils down to someone having the access in terms of internet, devices, connectivity and data, to the skills to use the internet and to make digital something that's worthwhile and meaningful in their lives, and the motivation to do so. And I'll talk very much about motivation because I think that's an undersold and really important part of digital inclusion. Why digital exclusion matters is that for people who are digitally excluded, it's becoming increasingly harder. People who are digitally excluded suffer from social exclusion, loneliness, and the impact of not being able to do things online has impacts on poverty. I'm now going to just unpick a few of those things that I mentioned in terms of, first of all, looking at access. It's a really big issue. So recent Ofcom data has highlighted, as of May 2021, there are still over 1.5 million households in the UK who remain offline. And why people remain offline is because cost is a big problem. People are affected by data poverty and have been even more so during the pandemic. They may only have one type of device, and actually not having suitable devices means that you're unable to do certain activities online. And we're increasingly worried about people who can't afford to do things or have different devices and therefore are smartphone only users. And I'll explain what being a limited user really means as I go through. Lack of digital skills is also a huge issue. We're looking at about 9 million people in the UK who can't use the internet and their device independently. So again, this is not a small scale issue. It also affects you, or is likely to affect you far more if you live with an impairment. So you're more than 3 times more likely not to have the skills to get online and use devices if you live with an ongoing health condition or disability. And it's a big problem also in terms of the future of work and working age people, because actually it's a majority issue. About 50%, over 52% of us lack the necessary digital skills for the workforce, for the workplace as it stands. I mentioned earlier about lack of motivation, and this is really, really a big issue. As government services have gone online, there's been a disconnect between government departments putting out a digital first service and the people who most need to use that having very low digital engagement. And it's a big part of why people remain offline. So over a third of the current offline population will say that the internet just doesn't interest them, it's not for them. And we see this as a really increasing issue with age. So whilst you might have to use digital as part of your work, once you retire, and increasingly at very much the older age groups, for example, 77% of people over 70 actually have really low motivation around using digital. They don't see it as something that's enriching in their life, and they're really much more focused on those immediate relationships and social connections. I also highlighted this issue around limited users. So traditionally, it's been talked about a digital divide between people who are on and offline, but I don't think we can see that as kind of such a black and white issue anymore. There is a growing number of people who only really use digital for very limited reasons, and therefore, as digital goes into every aspect of life and work, they are also at risk of being disadvantaged. People who we find and who our community partners support who are limited users have often left education early. They are older because they can't see the benefit or the reason to engage with digital. They might live in rural locations where internet connectivity is poor and it's difficult to get support. And they also, as I was saying, live with health conditions or disabilities, which may actually make the accessibility of using different devices difficult. There's also a growing risk and number of people who are actually social media only users. And that's really important in relation to the current debate and laws around kind of trying to improve online safety and address online harms. And this group may do social media, may share data, information about themselves very readily on social media, and therefore at increased risk. So why does this matter? So just in roundup, I think we'll all be able to see in our everyday lives that actually even trying to book a doctor's appointment or interact with a different government department, primarily this has now moved online. So this also includes benefits and also with HMRC making tax digital. Then you look at kind of things that you might do in your personal life, and private sector services have also gone online. Primarily things like banking, and even when you're shopping or trying to find out information, those are online. Jobs are predominantly advertised online, and it's really key that we acknowledge that digital skills will be a key to the future of work. They will be there in all jobs, and people will need to have them in order to remain employed. So if those are the challenges we see, what is the power of micro-local? As I said at the beginning, Good Things Foundation would have none of the impact it has without the amazing hyperlocal partners we work with in the online centres network. This is a diverse network, food banks, church groups, local authorities, education providers, libraries, and you can become a member of the online centres network by checking out the website. It's an offer that from Good Things Foundation is just about supporting you with digital inclusion, funding, joining you up with other organisations in your area, and trying to build that movement for digital inclusion. Why those centres are so critical to us is because they are the most trusted places in a community. When someone is in crisis, online centres have been there, not only to triage their needs and deal with that immediate issue, but to help people go on a digital inclusion journey, to link them up with other organisations that might support them, to build peer supported networks, and they're part of this amazing richness that can happen in an area. What I've put here, and I'm really happy to share my slides afterwards, is this is the kind of digital inclusion journey that we see people going on time and time again in online centres. So it's very person-centred. It's about addressing needs from that individual perspective. It's about learning to actually challenge some of your fears and barriers that you may have had for many, many years. And it's about the peer support. It's being with people who also may have those same challenges and barriers in a community setting, in somewhere where you don't feel judged, where you can work with others, where you feel that actually you go and experience the benefit of the internet in a way which is very person-centred to achieve your goals. Obviously, that was how our world used to look like. It used to look like this. It was about people coming to places in the local area. It was about time spent with other people. It was about people sharing things across generations and that richness of what you can bring and your own perspective. It was about troubleshooting, and it was about being there face to face, knowing there was somewhere you could go week in, week out. But then the pandemic hit and it was silent. All of those face to face wonderful places had to close their doors. And right back in March 2020, there was a flood of concern from both our community partners and people they supported. People kept saying, what's going to happen to us? Are you still going to be there for us? I think they realised that things were going to have to be online because of lockdown restrictions, but how could they do that without the support that had been there in the community? And what we saw during COVID-19 and people who were at risk of the digital divide was there was greater social exclusion, increased loneliness, real difficulties accessing a range of services, and an exacerbation of the financial difficulties that they might have been able to get help with before. It affected people who were shielding, people with low or limited digital skills, people who were unemployed, living in poverty, people on low income, people who were already being hard hit. And this was a real concern for us and our community partners. However, whilst the doors closed, support continued. It was incredible because what community partners easily did, they adapted and they started delivering food and medicine to people self-isolating. Digital inclusion was part of their mission agenda, but the immediate needs were around ensuring people had what they needed in terms of those kind of critical food and support. They made a huge number of emotional support calls. There was a lot of lack of trust about the messaging, about the information, and also how to absorb it and use it in your life. And they provided that service. So 71% of all of those thousands of community partners provided advice, and 72% actually supported people to get online for the first time, remain online, and then even things like learning how to work remotely. They help people with that, where people might have been at risk of redundancy if they couldn't do that otherwise. I just wanted to give a couple of examples of some of these amazing hyperlocal community partners. So in Gateshead in the northeast of England, Age UK shifted their support to online of older people. They reached about 3,000 to 4,000 people a week. They helped with Zoom GP calls. They brought in and upskilled their staff and volunteers via Zoom, and they've continued to do that, to provide that support whilst it hasn't been able to do that physically. In Birmingham, the Disability Resource Centre, whilst they had to cancel all face-to-face support, continued to do this by telephone and video calls. They also looked at the risks that people might suffer at this time around fraud. They helped them connect using Skype and shop online. They helped them with online banking, setting up bill payments, all those things that people suddenly had to do online. So I would say that whilst it may have been micro-local, this was about collective action. It was that amazing adaptability that community partners showed to provide and continue to provide frontline support and deliver remotely. One of the things that Good Things Foundation did with community partners was launch devices.now, which has continued to expand into the Everyone Connected programme. So this was not only, as many organisations have done, about getting devices out there, but data, connectivity, and most critically support to get someone set up. Because there's been stories, as we may have all heard, about people being given a device, but then actually unable to use it or worried they will break it. So that support was really embedded and critical. The other thing we have done with community partners is to co-design and collate remote delivery support resources, and I've linked to a page there, so that other organisations who were having to do that remote support could also do that and learn from others. At the time, we had, so probably in the autumn when this was published, we'd helped over 11,000, over 11,000 devices were secured and delivered. It's now in excess of 15,000. So how do you become part of this amazing opportunity to really embed digital inclusion and help people in your community? So I just want to finish by giving a couple of recommendations. I will give links to pages that are relevant, but I would, if you are interested in this, become an online centre. There is such a diversity in the network and digital is everywhere. So please join us and become part of the network. Secondly, we have been advocating with the government to fix the digital divide. So please join our campaign. This has to be an issue that the government invests in. It's not up to community partners to pick this up. There needs to be funding and there needs to be sustainability. I think at a local level, we need to advocate with our local authorities to embed digital inclusion into all local services. That is really critical. The day-to-day access of those services needs to be available to everyone. There's an opportunity for us all to promote the benefits for all people of using the internet. We can influence those in our daily lives and we can also help them. There's also an opportunity to harness the power of peers to build skills and motivation, to share what we know with others and to help. If we're in work, we should also take a responsibility. We need to encourage employers to support the development of basic digital skills in workplace training and prioritise those people who might be at risk and who are low-skilled staff. Finally, I would say that use digital inclusion to your advantage. It's a common issue and it's a common concern and it's something we can all work towards, and it can actually catalyse local collaborations and networks. I've included in my presentation links to some websites where you can find out more information and some reports that we've published throughout this time. And finally, if you'd like to follow up with me, please get in contact directly and I'd love to talk to you. Okay, those are my contact details. I'm on Twitter and that's my email as well. And I will stop sharing now.
Thank you very much indeed, Al. That's terrific. So, folks, we're going to have, there's a note also already in the chat from Laura, if you could put some collective action links in the chat for folks. Of course, I will be sending the slides around after the call, everyone, so you'll get all that too. So I have a question, before we have time for some questions, and then we'll have another breakout room session when you can discuss what struck you about this. But I have a question to start off with, Al, which is, so here I am in Edinburgh West End. It's a fairly connected place, but suppose I come across someone who's not online. And actually, this is one of the reasons I wanted to get you on a call today, because we have another member, long-standing member up here in Edinburgh, who always says, "Oh, but what if they're not online?" You know, she's sort of, you know, it's a sort of almost a stock response to everything. But so if I come across someone who's not online, it seemed to me that the thing I can do easily is connect them with a kind of online connection center or resource place who can help them. Is that the first step? How does it work?
Yeah, so the online centres network that I mentioned, and there's a link to in one of the slides, you can search your local area on the map and you can find there may be a whole variety of organisations who are online centres in your local area. They are really informal and very friendly. It's not about putting someone on a course or saying you must do this. It's about social places in your community that will be able to both help you and also that you'll be able to work with other people, or just observe. And I think that's the thing. It's not a mandated, you must be here to learn. We just want you to be part of our community. So I'd say definitely look at the Online Centres network map, check out the kind of organisations that are available in your area. I think there's also, when I talked about motivation, there's just sharing with other people. Why is the internet good for you? What personally does it enrich in your life? It's not about having to do things. It's about finding that hook that's really, that improves your day. So it might be anything from something random that you found on YouTube, to being able to share images, to whatever it is. And I think it's that personal hook for people who've kind of gone, everyone's telling me that I have to be online, I don't want to do it. So what makes it personal is really critical.
Thank you, that's great. And we can share those connections and resources. So folks, chance for questions and observations, please. If you want to just unmute yourself and shout out or wave your arms around, you can unmute if you like.
Can I ask a question, Mark? It's Sarah. Hello, thank you, Al. That was really, really helpful. And just following up on that last bit about the personal hook, I suppose I would be thinking as well to ask the person if they've got any fears or to find out what the barriers are, because I think those are really personal as well. I have a question that's just not a question because I can't really formulate it, but I'm just interested to hear your thoughts. I'm interested as well as kind of data poverty and digital inclusion, because I think data poverty is one of the hidden forms of poverty that we haven't been talking about. I'm also really interested in digital rights. I have worked with young people a lot, and that's something that I've talked with young people quite a lot. And I just wonder if you've got any thoughts about the crossing place or the meeting place of rights and inclusion and exclusion.
It's a really good and very meaty question, thank you. So I think it's a really interesting one, actually, coming back to your first point about barriers or fears, because I think there's sometimes a well-meaning kind of barrier that is put up by people who feel that someone else is vulnerable, not to give people the full information and not to actually help them build online safety skills, because everyone should have an absolute right to use the internet, but it's how you do that safely. And that's obviously particularly relevant for children, but we're in the middle of a program with DCMS, which is supporting people with learning disabilities to have a device and to go online and to develop digital skills. And there've always been a lot of kind of concerns or worries about people who other people view as vulnerable and kind of say, well, I'm not, this isn't good for you to do it, or I'll do it for you. So being online is an absolute critical right, but it's how we ensure people do it safely. So how do we build digital literacy, but also media literacy and literacy generally, to kind of go, this is okay. This is stuff that, you need to protect about your online identity. This is stuff this is what it means when things aren't looking okay as well. And I think actually the biggest thing is that education piece for us throughout the life course is really critical.
Thank you.
More questions. So there's a couple of things in the chat. Michael in Toulon is thinking this is a great idea and it's all new to him and they're going to think about it there in Austria. And Terry's saying there aren't any centres in Eastbourne, and she'd like to change that, which is
that's a great shout. We need coverage everywhere. So Terry, if we don't have centres there and you have organisations or you're part of a group who would like to become an online centre, please get in touch, because you can be one person, two people, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that you see digital inclusion as something you want to help people with. So would love to hear from you on that.
Great, thank you, Al.
Great, okay. So let's go to a breakout room session then, folks. We're going to go to groups of about 3 or 4, about 8 minutes, chance to talk about say hi to the people. There'll be new groups. What struck you about what Al has said? What can you do to perhaps connect with this? How could it be useful in your area? So I'm going to start the rooms off now, and I'll see you back here in about 8 minutes. Off we go. So hi everyone, welcome back from the discussion groups, and we have again a chance if anyone would like to ask Al anything or say anything or just make any broader points, you're very welcome to do so. There's James has put in the chat the link to the Good Things Foundation Online Centres Network page, so that's a great place to look up if there's something near you, particularly if you're in the UK, I think. So Marie has a question. Yes, Marie, go for it.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Al, that was great. And I really liked the beginning of your presentation, the kind of really simple model of access plus skills plus motivation. And I wonder if you could give us a bit more advice around the motivation bit. So I think I've got some ideas around access and skills, but I'd like to know how to try and improve the motivation and engagement of the people that we're trying to include.
That's a really great question. Thank you, Marie. And it was something I was going to talk to Sasha about, but we got cut off with our breakout room. I think the first thing is kind of knowing who's in your community. So your communities will all be completely different. And I think what's first really important is kind of think about who might be more digitally excluded. So it might be older people, it might be people who are living with a health condition or disability, people who are on low income or benefits, or people who are alone as well. And the thing is, where do those people go? Who are they in contact with? And who do they kind of on a trust and on a day-to-day, or kind of, obviously it's been difficult during the past year, but what are those contact points? And that's again why I was highlighting the online centres, because those will probably be the natural places that some people may be going anyway. Because I think with digital inclusion, you have to find that point of, first of all, the point of natural engagement. So you can do awareness raising in your local area, but how we found is it's those groups who are kind of working with putting on activities, whether it's a social coffee morning, a Keep Fit club. Those are kind of the places and the people who will have contact with other people. In terms of motivation and that hook, it is different for all of us. It's really interesting if I think about my past. So I was incredibly non-digital. I was kind of very much adamant, and I've got a kind of architecture and design background, and I didn't do any of the stuff digitally. I was just pen and paper, and I loved to draw. But what I went on to think about was I was also motivated a lot by social change and social justice. And digital started becoming the thing that was really, I suppose, evident in my work with some of the communities that I was in touch with around Sheffield. So I worked a lot with the learning disability community. So it became something I couldn't ignore. But then when I started working with people, a lot of people just said, as I said, it's not for me. I don't need to do it, or I asked my son to do it, or I've got someone who does this for me, or they weren't even aware. And I think you have to start, as I was saying, with that personal hook, and showing the benefit is really important, because people are much, much more aware of the negative sides, and they'll almost kind of use that argument not to do it because, I don't want to be ripped off, I don't want to be scammed. And also where cost is a real issue for people. Why should someone invest in having a device and data when they're struggling to have food for their family or pay their rent or anything like that? So there's, as I was saying in my breakout group, the education piece is really big, but the personal hook is really important. It has to be something that adds value to your life first and foremost. There's digital to solve the challenges, and there's digital skills to help more independently interact, but it has to be something that when you've done the stuff that you have to do, like booking a GP appointment online, you can do the nice stuff that you want to do, like looking up people who you've not been in touch with for a while on Facebook, or learning a new skill through YouTube, or finding a really good deal for something through online shopping. And I think it's the role, particularly for all of us, almost as informal digital champions in people's lives, is to sell that benefit. Kind of this, oh, I did it this week, I did this and it was great. And that's the important thing, because there is so much fear, and has been so much to fear in the world. So we have to kind of flip it round to something positive.
Thanks, Al. Thanks, Marie. Who else has a question or a comment?
I was just wondering if Laura Wigby wanted to talk a bit about her experiences, knowing kind of the great work that she's done around Norwich.
Yes, please, Laura.
Hello, yeah, I'm happy to. Sorry, I was just funny talking about kind of digital inclusion, and I'm using my phone and holding it up in the air, so my IT is not so great today, unfortunately, but yeah, oh, thank you. I'm really happy to. I work at Norwich City Council, and we have been running a digital inclusion project for a number of years now, about 5 years, and I've met Al loads of times through that. We're an online centre as well, and it's fantastic being one and being part of the network, and knowing that you're with loads of other kind of organisations that are really trying to address the same challenges as you and barriers as you. There's a real kind of a lovely partnership in that. So I would definitely say, I definitely recommend joining. So we do lots of different things really in the community. So we work with lots of different partners. We work out of loads of different venues. We fund a local voluntary and community group who train volunteers, and the volunteers kind of complement the other services that go on. So locally in Norwich, you can go on, computer classes and courses, and you can get qualifications and things. But where there was a gap in the market, I guess, was for people who just wanted a little bit of support as and when at a location that suited them, just to get to the next level, or to start without any pressure, without kind of appointments, maybe just to turn up somewhere and just get a little bit of informal help. So that's the sort of model we have. It's very much driven by learners or people in the community that need a bit of help, and by our volunteering base. And then we also loan equipment as well. So that's kind of been a newer addition. So we loan equipment to people who maybe don't have their own equipment at home, usually due to not being able to afford it, particularly around connectivity. So we loan out things like MiFis for people, so mobile Wi-Fi devices, so they can, or dongles, so they can go online at home, and for all kinds of different reasons. So often for courses, but also for job searching and all kinds of things. So we offer a few different options for people to overcome whatever barriers they face to going online. That's the goal. And also, a part of my job that I don't really talk about that much is that at the City Council, and it's kind of like what Al said earlier, I'm a kind of an advocate for people who are offline. There are some people who don't want to be online, or who might never be online, or us as a City Council, we might not be able to provide them what they need to go online. And so my role is also about making sure that, I'm an advocate for those people, making sure that when we do something new, there's an offline option, or that when we consult on something, that we're consulting with everybody, and understanding that link between people who are offline and all the other barriers that they might have in their life. So that in a nutshell is sort of what we do. It's lots of different partners, lots of different activities, and trying to sort of find a solution for as many people as possible. And we've also started to, through some of the work we do, fund some other organisations as well to do things locally. And that's been brilliant, because other organisations just come out with these fantastic ideas that, we wouldn't be able to run as a City Council, because probably, people probably wouldn't want to get involved in some of the stuff that we're doing, because it's probably a bit boring, the idea of a City Council running it. So that's been really fun. And one thing I thought I would mention, because it might be really good and relevant here, which is, I can't take credit for it, it's another group that's doing it, There's been loads of mutuals that have popped up, probably popped up in every city or village or wherever over COVID, and people are sharing WhatsApp messages and all of that kind of stuff. And we've funded a group that's been bringing communities together in terms of mutuals to do a really interesting kind of poster campaign. So they're working with individuals. They've been doing postcards and posters so that people can put up in their front window what they can support their neighbours with, which traditionally had been like, I'll pop to the pharmacy for you or to the supermarket or something like that. And they've added a sort of digital element on that. So on the poster that you can put up on your front window, it says, you know, I can help you to download some apps on your phone. I can help you to, I don't know, you know, apply for a job or whatever it needs to be. And so I guess it's sort of another way of reaching people who are offline, because we often think about promoting things online to people who are offline, and that's not, you know, that's not great. So so yeah, I guess there are some thoughts that I've kind of brought up when I've been listening to what Al said. That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Laura. That's very helpful. There's all sorts of good things in what you were saying there. I'm taking a couple of things particularly ways, but one is to have the offline option. And we try and do that here in the West End of Edinburgh, getting news out through old-fashioned things like notice boards. We have several notice boards in our patch, and I've become the notice board monitor for our bit of the neighbourhood, and I put up notices in the notice board and things like that. And the other thing was about the downloadable signs for the window. And I think maybe Sam Moon might be a colleague of yours, and he's I saw him tweeting and talking about that stuff in Norwich, and great work that's going on in the Norwich area. So we'll try and share those with people as well. So folks, we've just got a few moments. Any other questions or comments anyone would like to make before we wind up for this call and this month's event? Oh, by the way, also an excellent comment from James in the chat saying people often see computer skills teaching as being for its own sake. I liken it, he says, so most people don't have an interest in cars per se, but they like where they can take them. And the key is finding out where would you go. Absolutely. That's a super point, very well made there. James, so anything else for now, folks? Well, it just remains for me, first of all, to say thank you so much to Al for coming along. And there's a whole bunch of stuff on the Good Things Foundation website, including these online contact centres that we can all be plugging into and pointing people towards, and asking the question, if people don't seem to be, you know, online yet, or having difficulty getting online, you know, how can we help? How can we point them to those resources? So thank you, Al. That's been a super session today. A couple of things about the next stuff. Of course, there's lots of information on our website, villageinthecity.net, which is in the chat. And next month's call, the June call number 12, our 1 year anniversary, is on the 16th of June. And it's on growing your garden and your community with Kay Walter from the Hawley Hamlet of Lincoln, Nebraska, who've been over the last decade turning part of their city block into a community garden and finding all sorts of interesting benefits growing from that, not simply growing the community, but also having lovely vegetables and flowers and things to share and use as well. So that's next month. The booking link is in the chat if you would like to book for that. And I will, of course, send that out to everyone with the slides and everything else that we've talked about today. So thank you all for coming. Al, once again, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Much appreciated. And if anyone wants to hang on after the call and ask me anything about Village in the City, please do. But I think we are coming to the end of today's session. So thanks, everyone, and hope we'll see you next month and be in touch in the meantime. Cheers for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.